So for me, getting cattle was absolutely intrinsic, and it was something I knew I had to do quite a few years ago. So we always used to have steers on the farm, so store cattle that we bought from market, but obviously they were just wild things that someone else didn't want, essentially. So for me, to actually have my own herd, to be able to close it from a disease standpoint and ensure that I'm not getting any disease come on the farm was really, really important. And for me, it's critical to be able to grow some form of diverse grass crop. So we're standing in a herbal lay at the moment. Some form of diverse grass crop that has a use and gets consumed by something. And obviously these are going to convert that grass into really fantastic fertility, on top of the fact there are a ton of legumes in this that also create a ton of fertility and really kind of massively improve my soil. So it's all about kind of looking at making sure I can improve my soil and make it such that my arable crops are going to be really, really fantastic. And also the fact that obviously they've got their dung coming out as well is really critical from a biodiversity standpoint. So I've seen a ton of dung beetles come onto the farm now. Essex Wildlife Trust, who farm over that way and have our cattle on the land, they've been doing dung beetle surveys, and I'm really, really pleased by the number of dung beetles they're finding. So obviously a dung beetle is kind of a ground level part of ecology, and then you get other trophic levels existing on top of that because that species exists. So it's critical to get a fully integrated ecological system to have something like a cow on the farm. So I've been quite lucky in the fact that because we have had cattle before on the farm, albeit in a different fashion, we have had quite a lot of equipment already here. So I'm very lucky. Actually, I've got the race and crush currently set up in this paddock because we were separating and weaning the cows recently. But we did have kind of pen equipment, temporary pen equipment, and a crush available. So the stuff that kind of we bought since we've established this herd, we've gone for the solar energizers for our kind of paddocks, because we move our animals quite regularly, and we've invested in the electric wire and things like that, and the temporary stakes. But all that stuff's really pretty cheap, so it's not been that expensive. Again, we have got a couple of decent water supplies on the farm historically, because we have had cattle to some extent, albeit not integrated into the arable side of the farm. And so because we've had that water there, it's not been an absolute nightmare in terms of making sure that we can water the cattle. What I need to do from this point is actually get to a stage where I've got water supplies much more all over the farm. We're dealing, where these cows are at the moment, the water supply to here is 500 metres of overground pipe. We're in winter at the moment. That didn't defrost yesterday until 11:30, so it's definitely not ideal. So I went for red poll cows. These are a native breed to this sort of area, so to the southeast. They're dual purpose, so they're one of the few breeds that has actually genuinely remained dual purpose, so good for both beef and for dairy. And this was kind of me looking at livestock and trying to work out how I can explain the importance of livestock and cows being on a farm, while still having people who are vegan or looking to go vegan still understand the importance of it. So my thought with that was, or I suppose vegetarian, I guess, my thought with that was to say, well, actually, if I'm doing a dual purpose animal, then they're not necessarily seeing an animal being killed. I mean, for me, I want to do beef and dairy. So the beef is obviously existing, the cows are existing. The dairy will come in a few years' time, and I've got the ability to set that up with the aim to make cheese. But it's really that kind of, it's the idea of saying, well, is there a really kind of hyper ethical way of doing dairy production, cheese production? So I'm looking at a calf at foot system when I do that in the future, which will obviously be low yielding. So I'm not going to get a huge milk yield from the cows when I keep the calves and the cows together, but I'll still get enough to make a kind of pretty artisanal cheese product, hopefully. So it's really the fact that they ultimately give me a lot of flexibility. They're really suited to the type of grazing that we've got here. They're suited to being outside all year round, and they're a really lovely, friendly breed as well. And they calve naturally very easily, also very important. So I mean, we're standing here in January at the moment. Cows are out. They've been out. They were out all of last winter as well. Last year we were a little bit. So they started calving a bit earlier than I expected last year, and we felt a little bit nervous. So we actually back shedded them last year. So they had a paddock which we were kind of moving them across this field, but they always had access to a shed whilst they were calving. I feel a lot more confident about it this year. So we're purely and simply out wintering on this herbal lay. We move them regularly, so it's not a problem in terms of poaching. Again, it's a super dry winter this year, so we're not causing poaching as it is. But yeah, I have no worries with this breed that they're gonna be a problem outside. I do want to, I mean, this paddock's a perfect example of somewhere without any shelter. I do want to make sure that we've got better shelter belts set up, so they've got a bit more ability to get out of the elements when the elements are strong. But no, they seem to do great outside, so why would I bother having them inside and littering up with all the disease risks and the extra stress risks and all the extra work? I remember like a few years back when I was talking to people, I often heard people talking about a cow an acre in terms of kind of the number of stock they can manage on their farm. I'm aiming more towards a cow every 2 acres, with the idea being that I don't really want to have to be feeding them anything when they're down here. We've got emergency food, so I do have hay from our marshes. We've got some haylage that I've cut from these herbal lays as well, as an absolute necessity. And I'm using some of that. We're in a kind of funny transitional time at the moment, so I've got some heifers that I bought in that are in quarantine at the moment. They're on quite a small paddock, so I am supplementarily feeding them as well. But yeah, just hay or haylage, and going forward, it's only going to be hay. Again, the benefit of red poles, they do really, really well. If it's natural hay from this area, it's going to have enough to keep them going. And provided they're outside and they've got the ability to pick out all the different herbs and legumes and stuff like that, I'm genuinely not concerned about them getting deficient in anything. So yeah, I like to keep it nice and simple and not worry too much about a ration. In terms of selling anything, we're really not there yet. So this year I have got a couple that are going to get killed. That is just due to some disease that I found out I had quite recently. So I obviously want to get rid of that disease from the herd, so I've got to fatten those animals and get them culled, taken out. And it's next year, so 2023, when things are really going to actually kick up and I'm going to have to make sure I'm beginning marketing. So I'm very much in that kind of building stage at the moment. The aim, I'm hoping, is to be able to kill on farm, and that's where I'm directing an awful lot of my efforts at the moment, to be able to set up some way of killing on farm, butchering on farm, and really keeping the stress of the animal as low as possible at death, which I think should massively improve the quality of the meat, and from a personal standpoint, make me an awful lot happier that I don't have to ship them off in a truck to an abattoir, which is going to take, at least an hour. And with, of course, abattoirs closing, distances going, even further for livestock in trailers, and especially here in the southeast where we don't have many abattoirs. Yeah, it's trying to close that loop a bit and make myself feel a little bit happier about killing my animals.